what's involved in the transfer process. Why is it important? Why is it something that schools do? Why is it something that you might want to consider? Hello, and welcome to the Admittedly podcast. My name is Thomas Caleel. I'm the former director of MBA admissions and financial aid for my alma mater, the Wharton School at the University of Pennsylvania. In this podcast, I don't promise easy answers or quick fixes, but I will use my decades of experience to help you achieve your education goals. Now let's get started. Hello, and welcome to Season 4 of the Admittedly podcast. I'm your host, Thomas Caleel, and today we're going to talk about transfer applications. But before we do that, I just want to take a minute and say thank you. Thank you to all of you who listen to us on Apple and Spotify. Thank you to all of us who follow Admittedly on Instagram, TikTok at AdmittedlyCo. This has been a wild ride. My first episode of the Admittedly podcast was about 2 years ago now, February 22nd of 2023. Cannot believe how far we've come since then. And it's due to you, to the people who listen, follow, and engage with us. Thank you so much for your DMs, for your comments. I really work hard on staying kind of on top of that, trying to answer you, trying to respond. It's really been meaningful to me. And thank you very much. I think the launch of the new Early Edge Plus has been phenomenal. Phenomenally well received. And we're seeing, when we're talking to families, we're really seeing that they're incorporating the things that they're hearing in the podcasts and learning on social media from us. And it's a great feeling. So thank you. Let's kick off Season 4 and jump right in. Transfer applications. We're getting a lot of questions about this. And so I want to take a minute for all of you out there who are thinking about it. So what is a transfer application? Transfer is when you are currently enrolled in college and you decide for whatever reason you would like to change schools. Generally, the transfer deadlines are in March, anywhere from like March 1st to March 15th. And these are important dates to keep in mind. The schools do that so that they have the most complete picture possible of your academic work at your current school. So let's kind of step back for a second and think about, okay, what's involved in the transfer process? Why is it important? Why is it something that schools do? Why is it something that you might want to consider? So first of all, transferring, schools realize sometimes that, circumstances have changed or your direction has changed. And there may be things that are going on that you want to move schools. And that's okay, right? We sometimes make decisions based on incomplete information, and many times that's the case in admissions. And sometimes you'll get to a school and realize, hey, you know what? Example from last year, student went to a great school, and went to WashU, and looked around and was like, academically, it has everything I want, but for me, I just don't like the kind of integration into the city. I wanted something that feels more like a college, something where students don't disperse out into the city for social life, and that was very meaningful to them. And so we crafted a strategy around that, and it ended up being quite successful. But it's very important to think about why you want to transfer. Right? Because all of the schools will ask this in either the personal statement or their individual essays. They're going to ask you, why do you want to transfer? And now I know some of you are trying to do a little bit of a leapfrog game and transfer and say, okay, well, I'm in my school's ranked number 25. I want to go up to number 10 or number 8. And that is, quite frankly, not a good reason to transfer. And it's one that will be very, very apparent to the admissions officer that's reading your file. And I know that in your mind, you're like, okay, but that is a valid reason. And I hear you, but the admissions officers are asking you to think more deeply, right? Because rankings are rankings. They're not overly relevant in most cases. You can get a great education a lot of ways. And so simply saying, I want to go to Harvard because of its reputation is not enough. Okay, they get thousands of transfer applications every year, and that's just not enough. So what we want to do is we want to think about, okay, where am I right now? And what about my current location is not serving me? All right. And it's okay. You're not bashing the school. I mean, look, if you've had like an aggressively negative experience at the school, you can talk about that, but you want to be careful not to sound like somebody who's just kind of out there complaining and, really kind of complaining for the sake of complaining. So what is it? Is it that you're not getting access to classes? Is it that you're, in these huge lecture halls and you're not interacting with your professors? Is it maybe that you don't like the partying atmosphere on campus, or there's too much or too little Greek life, or too much emphasis on sports, or you've shifted your focus and what you thought you wanted to study was great at this university, but what you now believe you want to study, there's just not the depth of faculty and research and interesting things to engage with there. So all of these need to kind of go into your thought matrix, and you really need to articulate clearly, this is why I came to this school, right? This is why it no longer serves me. And this is why I think the school I'm applying to is a much better fit for what I want to accomplish at this point in my life. This is just as important as when you were applying as a freshman. Why this school? But it's even more important because now you've been through that process and you've made this commitment, and the schools are very wary. They just want to make sure, okay, why are you doing this? Because also you have to understand that when you're applying as a freshman, there might be 1,000 or 1,200 or 1,900 seats in that freshman class. But for transfers, it's usually a much smaller number, and that number varies from year to year depending on a lot of different factors. So the competition is very, very intense for a very, very small number of very limited number of seats. So we want to be very thoughtful about that, right? But we've thought about it, we've articulated our reasons in our head, and we're saying, okay, this is why, I want to transfer out. Okay, great. So one of the main considerations is obviously academics, right? Have you taken an academically rigorous course load? Have you challenged yourself? Have you risen to that challenge and done well academically, right? Because if that's not the case, don't bother trying to transfer, because you're not going to be successful in that endeavor. Academics are absolutely important in this. And like I said, rigor, you can't just take 3 or 4 classes, a couple easy classes and say, but I have a 4.0 GPA. Just like in undergraduate admissions, that doesn't cut it, right? They're going to look line item at your transcript. They're going to look class by class. They're going to assess rigor, and they're going to look at your performance in that particular class. Now, you also need to be involved in your community. And we get a lot of questions about this in the comments. I want to address this. Nobody expects you to be president of a club, but they do want to see that you're out there, you're engaged, you're involved in the social fabric of the school. Why? Because if you're just going there and grinding out grades, the school you're trying to transfer to doesn't have a whole lot of incentive to let you in, because they don't need another person there grinding out grades. They want somebody who can excel academically, but also kind of jumps in with both feet, right? And says, hey, I'm here. I'm going to make the best of it. I'm going to do some interesting things. I'm going to do things that interest me and excite me. So we need a balance there. You don't need to overcommit to extracurriculars, but you certainly need, a couple of them that you're doing and you're engaged in. All right. The other reason that the academics are important is that you do need recommendations. And I get a lot of questions about this in DMs, comments, emails, etc. And they'll say, okay, but A, my faculty professors barely know me. They've only taught me for a semester. And B, are they going to be mad that I'm trying to transfer? And those are two great questions. Number one, the universities you're transferring to, they understand you've only known these professors for a semester. And so, they do want to see the context that you know them, and they're going to, adjust those accordingly. One question that always comes up too is, hey, I don't even know my professor. They come in and they talk for like an hour and leave, and nobody ever interacts with them. The interaction that I have is with the TA or grad student. And that's okay as well. You can have that TA or grad student write your recommendation and just say in there, hey, the student, or, you can put in the additional information section, I don't have access to the professor, and this is the person that knows me best. Totally fine. The universities see this every year, and it's not a big deal. But you do want to form relationships with those teachers, whether it's a professor, TA, grad student, whatever it is, over the course of your first semester, right? Because if you just pop your head up in February and say, hi, I don't know if you remember me, but can you write me a recommendation? It's going to feel disingenuous, and they're going to be a little bit turned off by that. And they're going to wonder, like, what am I supposed to write? I barely know you. So the same thing I said about undergraduate recommenders, right? Schedule a meeting, write out notes for them, highlights of the class, things that you did, refresh their memory, go over why you're trying to transfer to a particular school, program, etc., so that they understand why you're doing this and they have clarity and they can frame their recommendation in that light. Okay? There is a Common App for transfer applications. You can get to it through Common App. It's slightly different, but also kind of the same as the Common App. So what I would tell you is go in early, do your data entry, and really be careful, right? And one of the things you really have to do, it's getting better. It gets better every year. But sometimes there are discrepancies between what's listed in the Common Transfer app and what's listed on the school's website. So once you make your list of schools, I want you to go to their transfer webpage and really take your time and compare what they're asking you for there to the application, because sometimes there will be additional forms or additional essays that are listed on the website that are not necessarily clear or listed in the Common Transfer application. And it's really, really important. The other thing is that not all the schools put the essay requirements in the same place. So there might be some essays under questions. There might be some essays under documents. So do not rush this last minute. You will likely miss something and it will not go well for you. So take your time, enter the information, do it correctly, sync that up with the school's transfer website, and make sure that you do proper job. The other thing to keep in mind is that there are forms. Usually those are forms that need to be completed by the registrar, sometimes signed off by your professors. So do not leave this till the last minute. You really want to come back, download those, go over to the registrar's office. Registrars take their time. They do a very important job, and there's a lot of safeguards and checks that they have to do, and they're usually somewhat backed up. So don't go screaming in there, 3 days before the deadline going, oh my God, hurry, I need this right now. They will not react kindly to that. Go in, give them plenty of time, get ahead of it, give them the form, see if you need to have the form, if the schools have their own form that need to be signed by a professor, etc. Get ahead of it, plan ahead, and you will be okay. Now, essays. Essays are really important. Almost all of the schools you're going to be trying to transfer to have a personal statement. And the personal statement basically asks you, tell us about who you are and why you're doing this. Now, just had a conversation with a student and they were trying to cram everything into this personal statement. And I said, well, wait a minute, let's take a step back and let's look at the supplements for the schools. And you'll notice in the supplements for the schools that you're applying to, there are a lot of essays. And in some cases, some of these schools, it's pretty much the exact same essay set that's in the regular Common App. Right. So Stanford, for example, has a lot of essays that you need to fill out. Penn has the same essays. Do not recycle your essays from last year, right? That is not a good look, and it shows that you really haven't put the effort in. But also you want to think about, okay, if I'm talking about why I want to transfer to this school, maybe I don't need to cram it all into the personal statement, right? Now, other transfer schools only have the personal statement. So you might need one or two versions of the personal statement, one that puts everything, like who I am, why I'm at this school, what I don't like about this school, and why I want to transfer to your school. That's maybe one version. And the other version is who I am and why I am looking to transfer. And then in the supplement essays, if the school you're applying to has multiple supplement essays, then you can really go and articulate, okay, this is why I want to be at your school. And it needs to be specific. You really need to show the school, hey, I understand why I'm trying to make this change. I understand what I don't have in my current environment and why this school specifically has exactly what I need. So take your time, do it right. If you have questions on the essays, you're welcome to use our essay review service. Take advantage of that. It's on our website, www.admittedly.co, or otherwise turn to a trusted advisor, somebody who can really help you make sense of these essays. Go back, watch my free webinar on essays. And that should be available on our website. And then also I did a live on essays on Instagram, so you can go watch that as well. All of those principles hold in terms of authenticity of voice, in terms of clarity, in terms of you being able to really, really articulate your vision in a way that captures their attention and is not high level and vague, because schools are ruthless about transfer applicants and they really hold you to a high standard on that. So again, we want to be very clear about why we're doing this. We want to be very clear about why your current school does not serve your needs. We want to be clear about why the school you're applying to does serve your needs as you see it and understand it now. And then we want to get ahead of ourselves in terms of securing recommendations. And by the way, in many cases too, you're going to need a high school transcript. So you need to plan ahead and reach out to your high school for that. The transfer process does sometimes allow you to get recommendations from high school officials. So that might be your former counselor, it might be your former head of school, whoever knows you the best. I think be judicious. If they're just going to say, hey, Thomas, yeah, I kind of remember him. Yeah, he was fine, right? Maybe not, but because judgment, right? This goes to judgment. And I've talked a lot about that in previous podcasts. Just the admissions officers are really evaluating you on your judgment. Are you thoughtful about who you get to write a recommendation? Or are you just like pushing everybody you know, like write me something, right? Can they add value? Is it maybe somebody that you've worked for over the summer or you've been involved in extracurricular activity with? Somebody there that can really speak to character, motivation, and give a different perspective than your faculty, professors, and your transcript. Okay. So I think now as we're talking about transfer applications, I want to say thank you to all of you who sent me emails and DMs and comments with questions. So I'm going to take a few minutes and talk through those questions right now. Number one, transferring into Penn from another country or international transfers in general. Certainly universities take international transfers. I think you need to make sure that your course rigor matches up. I think you want to look at, do transfers generally credit from my country to the U.S. Institution? And, really kind of articulate why you're making this move now and out of that institution. But it's absolutely possible, and it's something that happens, I would say, fairly regularly. Number two, and this is a very specific question for the University of Pennsylvania. Penn, like many universities, does give preference to local applicants, and so they do that. What you'll see too is like in New York and Texas and California, the community college system, there's a big preference there. And in some cases, like in California, it's legally mandated that a lot of the UCs have to take like guaranteed transfer students from community colleges. So I think be thoughtful about that. We have a lot of community colleges in California that are full of international students and other students who are there doing their 2 years, trying to save money and put themselves in the best possible position to transfer into a UC. So that is certainly an option. Okay. But be aware that admissions officers are smart. So if you're trying to game the Penn system by moving to Philly to study, that's very different than, let's say, a born and bred native Philadelphian who finished high school, went to community college, or went to a local college and is now trying to transfer. They see you, right? Again, a lot of questions around community college. I'm a big fan of community college. I think that it saves you a lot of money. If you plan it correctly, you can take some great classes. There's some great opportunities there. And in some cases, in the California system in particular, puts you in a very strong position to transfer. UCLA and Berkeley are exempt from the guaranteed transfer process, but certainly, if you're in the California community college system, you're going to have a preferred look in that process. So one question I got a lot of, and this is kind of summarizing a lot of them, it says, while it may be pointless to try and be a, quote, unique applicant, how do you avoid a too generic reason for transferring? And I think that being unique is very important, and your own experience and your own path is unique. And so if you find yourself giving what you think is a generic reason for transferring, then that tells me, and it should tell you, you haven't really done the hard work to ask yourself the questions, right? Why am I doing this? What am I hoping to accomplish? What does this mean to me? And I see this very, very clearly in students that are simply trying to just jump up the rankings because they don't have a clear and compelling reason. And because of that, it just comes off muddled and very kind of circular writing, circular logic. And so you need to be honest with yourself. And I actually got a great comment on my transfer reel with somebody saying, I sat down to ask myself these questions and realized in that process that I actually loved the school I was at and it was the right place for me, and I didn't transfer. That won't always be the case, but you do need to go deep on these. This is not something you're going to rush out in a week. It's something you really need to think about and write carefully. It's no different than your Common App personal statement when you're trying to really articulate what you're hoping to accomplish and why this matters to you. So I think looking cliche is on you. It's, if you are not doing the work to really dig deep and give an honest answer, yes, you are going to look cliche, and no, you're not going to be admitted for a transfer. So to summarize, the transfer process is complex. It takes time. It takes a lot of hard work, and it's not to be taken lightly. The schools make it this way because they don't want to be inundated by a bunch of people just casually trying to transfer. They want students who are committed to the process and students who say, yes, I need a change and I'm willing to do what it takes to drive that change. One friendly reminder, we've also been getting a lot of inquiries about whether or not Admittedly and the Early Edge Plus works with transfers. We absolutely do. You can book a consultation call with our admissions advisors on our website, www.admittedly.co. You can reach out to me on socials @admittedlyco, both TikTok and Instagram. You can send us an email, hello@admittedly.co. A lot of ways for you to reach us. Get in touch. We'll get you talking to somebody and see if we're a good fit for you and if you are a good fit for our program. So again, thank you so much. Welcome to the 4th season. I always listen to and welcome your feedback. So if there are topics that are meaningful for you, if there are topics you'd like me to address, send it to me in any of the channels, and I look forward to a really successful admission season ahead. Thank you. Thank you for joining us today. Please take a moment to subscribe to the Admittedly podcast and download this episode. I welcome you to share your thoughts and questions with me. You can find us on social media @Admittedly Podcast. I look forward to continuing